listening to NT Paranormal After Dark. Nothing normal about it.
Welcome back, everybody, for Season 2 of the After Dark Paranormal Podcast. I'm Ashton Rogers, and this is Sarah Hatfield. Say hello, Sarah.
Hey, we have seasons now?
Yeah, we did 52
fancy.
episodes. There's 52 weeks in a year, so, we do episode every week. So we're going to try to do a weekly episode again, so we're into... crashed in. Yes, of course I've made that intro. I'm our,
Intro maker?
I would say producer, the executive producer. Super
you want
important
your
things.
fancy title?
I'm the executive producer, founder, lead investigator,
Team asshole.
Brashton, and
I think Brashton's my favorite.
So yeah, we're playing with the format a little bit. So we took a little break before we decided to go to season 2. Sarah didn't quit smoking yet, so that's what that is in the background. What?
Nothing.
What is that? Was that a ghost? Was that an EVP?
Yes.
Is this place haunted?
Probably.
It's haunted by a ghost that really hates me and is a chronic smoker. No? You don't agree?
Yes.
Oh.
I am the ghost.
So yeah, we're changing up the format a little bit. We're going to kind of loosen it up, kind of go back to the roots of making it a little bit more conversational.
Roots.
Instead of me trying to wrangle everybody in and, hit certain plot points, we're just going to see where the discussion goes, and you guys can join in, of course, because it's live. But today, what would you say the topic is? I mean, I was trying...
Weird crap from across the internet.
Yeah. Initially, I saw... I guess it was a post on Facebook that initially brought it up.
Wait, pause.
What?
We have a special announcement today.
What
It
is
is
that?
Brashton's birthday.
No, it isn't.
It is. It's his birthday.
That's false.
Allie said, happy birthday. It's your birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, today's my birthday.
He's like 40.
No, I'm not. I'm 37.
That's close enough. Same thing. Anyway, sorry. Weird
Why
stuff
is that
from-
important to the paranormal podcast?
So
Why is-
everybody can tell you happy birthday.
Oh, okay. Yes, I will be accepting birthday wishes, I guess. Not really. That sounds horrible.
Anyway, weird stuff across the internet.
Well, I saw that post a few days ago on our page. It was this long lost Reddit post, or no, the Reddit poster was talking about something.
It was a Twitter feed, but
yeah, that was. He was talking about trying to go back and find this information from a phenomenon that everybody was talking about, and then all the info seemed to kind of disappear from the internet. And you should ask Sarah to stop vaping for my birthday. Yeah, you should stop vaping. You should totally quit.
don't want to.
I don't know. Are we? So I kind of have my ideas about what it is or what causes it. It's loosely related to Mandela effect. But the thing that he was talking about was there was this CERN. Is that how you would say it? It's an
that's what
acronym,
I'd
but
say.
it's CERN, CERN, and it's
Hadron Collider.
Yeah. Is it Hedron or Hadron?
I don't know. They throw in particles and particles.
Oh no, and there's Boson Higgs.
Higgs boson.
Higgs
right?
boson?
Higgs boson? Higgs boson? I don't know. I was saying Higgs boson.
Anyway, I should know that.
Boss hog.
Boss hog. That's what it is.
The God particle.
The boss hog
It's
particle.
the whole God particle thing. And,
it's the Boss Higgins particle.
Famous scientist dude that had the bad disease said that could possibly,
Stephen Hawking. The famous scientist dude with the bad disease. I love it.
Decay our universe.
What was that? That's your thing. Stop that.
Oh, it's on vibrate. Oh, I keep getting an Amber Alert.
Oh, stupid Amber.
God.
What? What's going on? What's the Amber Alert? We should announce this. We're live.
Oh, it's in the Waxahachie.
If you're in the Waxahachie area,
it's not giving me the actual...
There's something bad in Waxahachie. Amber Alerts don't do weather.
White Nissan Quest.
There's a white Nissan Quest.
Yeah, they don't have a name or whatever, just a car.
Okay, so
I'm sure literally everyone got that on their phone.
So if you see a white Nissan Quest in Waxahachie, set it on fire. And
I'll probably wait till the kid's out of it.
No, whoever's in it, drag them out and just beat them senseless. We should. No, don't do that. That's inciting violence. That's it. That's exactly why we hate our current president right now.
You
That's
just-
a joke. That is actually a joke. I'm saying that's a joke. Unlike, certain political leaders who will say stuff like that. And,
Stop it.
And people
Stop
get their
it.
ass beaten.
We're not
And he's
talking
like,
about
haha.
politics.
Okay. It's not. No, but what we were talking about.
Although politics is actually kind of related to this
It is.
topic.
It's part of the theory. So anyway, okay. Wrangle it back in a little bit. So in 2012, CERN was going to flip on the Hadron Collider. And this was the experiment that resulted in the boson Higgs, the God
Higgs
particle.
boson.
Higgs boson, whatever. I'm saying it backwards. I always get it backwards for some reason. And it was the experiment that resulted in them basically discovering the God particle, right? But one of the big controversies around it at the time in 2012 was they were afraid
it would end the world.
Yeah, what they were afraid is that it would actually cause a black hole. And Hawking actually had crippled scientist guy. He had a theory about it,
crippled.
and he wasn't saying
I
this
said
was a
bad
certainty.
disease.
He said, yeah, there's a possibility that it could cause, basically molecular decay at a universal level and destroy the universe.
Yeah.
Now,
And they were like, oh, well.
well,
anyways.
the thing is it was a real tongue-in-cheek comment, but it got the way it got printed, and I'm sure you can't tell. Like, how could you tell Stephen
If he's joking,
Hawking
because
is
it's all
being,
the same tone.
and it could decay the universe, unless he puts LOL.
Yeah,
in
he's
it,
missing
or,
his sarcasm.
Or ha ha ha. There's no inflection. But it was a real tongue-in-cheek sort of comment he made. But it was a half. It was a half-assed, realistic.
Allie, that's the topic. Shut up.
Bring the lizard government, and then we've been dead since we found the God particle.
That's the topic. Is the world ended when we found?
Yeah,
that.
we're basically in purgatory. So anyway, what the idea is that when they turned it on, not only did we find the God particle, what it is they actually created a black hole, and we all got sucked into it, and it destroyed reality in 2012, and we've been living in the aftermath. And you can go a bunch of different directions from there. It's either reality's destroyed and we're all in purgatory, or we're in the process of being sucked into a black hole, or we live in a simulation and it effed up the simulation and now everything's all glitched out, or it caused multiple realities to kind of collide and things to bleed through. And one thing I put out there earlier today was, maybe it blinked out like half of our population to our mirror reality or whatever, and that's only half of us. But since 2012, there's been a lot of phenomenon, an increase in phenomenon recorded of instances of things in reality not lining up, like Trump being elected president. They were like, "What? How the hell could this possibly happen?" And
it's more oh my God, Mandela effect.
Right.
It dumps straight back into the Mandela effect.
Yeah, and that's why I don't know. That's why I couldn't think of like a good title or what our topic is, because it branches off in all these multiple little
You should have
threads.
just gone the apocalypse that happened.
It is the apocalypse. So what are your thoughts on this so far?
It's fun, I guess, to think about. Why do you keep drinking my water?
Because I'm thirsty. Shut
Get
up.
your own water.
Shut up, dirty fish.
Oh my God. So, that's a symptom of the apocalypse. Your weird sleep talking.
That started in 2012.
Did it?
Yeah, that started in 2012 after they fired up.
I don't think it's a thing, but I think it's an interesting thought exercise.
So we don't know, first off, what happens when you enter a black hole, when you get across the event horizon and you start going towards the singularity. We've got ideas about it, but we don't know. But I mean, at the core of it, I don't necessarily think that could be a thing, because the whole thing that fuels a black hole, what we do know about is it's all fueled by extreme gravity, like at the point of singularity. So if it was a black hole, I doubt it would create an alternate reality that we would just all slip into, because it wouldn't just crush us, we'd that would be a thing. We would become mush. But the idea that time space is relative to the observer, right? So, we see our universe is like vast and infinite, and we know now that it's not. Like, it's very not infinite. But it seems very vast and infinite to us, but there could be a bigger universe that exists inside of, and it's very infinitesimal to that. Like if you were the size of an atom or a molecule, you would think that this here is like very vast, but to us it's very small. And so we have no concept of that. And the other problem is like when you're talking in multi-dimensional thought processes, like we can't really wrap our heads around it, because there's that whole thought experiment about how a two-dimensional being can't really grasp a three-dimensional space. Like if you draw a line on the edge of a stack of paper, that goes up the y-axis. And so if you're a being that lives on that flat plane, yeah, you see that dot and you understand that point, but it just intersects with your reality, and so it doesn't make sense. It would be like a ghost, or it's like, why is this dot just floating in midair? But if you, do that, you realize, oh, it's multiple planes of existence. So us as three-dimensional beings wouldn't understand a four-dimensional space, whatever that could be. And a two-dimensional being would say the same thing. Three dimensions, yeah, it makes sense to us because we think in three dimensions, but they'd be like, what is a three-dimensional space? But a lot of stuff went crazy after 2012. There's the whole Mandela effect thing, and it kind of goes into that. And one of the big things I saw, we talked about Mandela effect before, but one of the things I hadn't seen on the Mandela effect was the Statue of Liberty photos that somebody was talking about.
I hadn't seen that one either.
And that one was really weird. That kind of made me, most of the stuff we talked about with Mandela effect.
It could be just wrong memory. And we've discussed how bad your memory is before. Yeah,
and different things. But this one was weird because the person that had wrote the article and was asking the questions found this. So first off,
well, I've never been to the Statue of the Liberty. Have you?
No, I haven't personally been. Okay, so I did fact check that one statement though about apparently you can't go up into the torch. Where you can go up into is I guess the crown part, and they take people up the statue up to the crown, but the torch has been completely like closed off since the
yeah, it's ironic. Bader Meinhof effect. I was just watching Big Mouth, and they go the episode where they go up in the Statue of Liberty, and they're talking about Ellis Island, and they're up in the crown thing, and I was like, that's.
Oh, they said Ellis Island on it.
They said look over there, you can see Ellis Island.
See, that's totally nuts. Okay, so
I always knew Ellis Island wasn't the same as Liberty Island.
I didn't. Really? I had no idea. And most of the people I've ever talked to, and I can swear I remember seeing it in movie, the first X-Men movie that Fox put, with Wolverine, the first one with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I saw it. But
yeah, they fight on top of the Statue of Liberty, and I can almost remember that they went to Ellis Island to go to the Statue of Liberty to do the thing, and they're up in the torch part where he made the machine or whatever. Okay, so anyway, they don't let people up into the torch because it was bombed by the Germans during World War II. Like, no, I have no. Well, I wasn't around, but I'm into history, and I didn't know about that.
Mina, the Mandela effect, it's named after, some people think that Nelson Mandela died in prison when he actually lived a pretty long life, but it's stuff like, did you ever read the Bernstein Bear books as a kid? And it turns out it's Bernstein Bears.
Bernstein, yeah.
Or there's other stuff like, how does the song Champions of the World end by Queen?
We Are the Champions. It's exactly what it is 50% of the population remembers certain facts differently than what they really are when you go back and fact check them. So like one of the big ones is We're the Champions. And a lot of people remember
the world
is the last word spoken at the end of the song. But it's not. It's We're the Champions, and then the song just ends. But everybody always remembers, oh, the world. I hear people sing it all the time. And on the Mighty Ducks soundtrack, it does end that way, which is really weird. It's really weird that they did that. They had to edit it back in that way for some reason. The Bernstein Bears.
That's my big one because my grandma read those books to me when I was little.
Shazam, or no, not Kazam.
I don't know, but the movie where Sinbad is the genie. Yeah,
there's a movie where Sinbad plays a genie. Turns out there's not a movie where Sinbad plays a genie.
Yeah,
and it's this big like source of contention, but like 50% of the population, like it's almost right on the line.
Another thing we're throwing out there is the Bader-Meinhof effect, and that's so Nelson Mandela's and what he was like he was a good guy. Nelson Mandela was a good guy. He was
mostly good
okay.
guy.
Well, we see him
bad politician, but not an evil dude.
Yeah, he wasn't a bad dude, but South African stuff. I don't know about it.
He was wrongly imprisoned by the government down there, and 50% of the population remembers him dying in prison. But he
actually just died like a few years ago.
Yeah. This was like back in the late 80s, early 90s. Nelson Mandela was in prison, and most people remember, or not most people, but a lot of people remember, oh yeah, Nelson Mandela died in prison. But the facts are is Nelson Mandela got out of prison and went on to be a leader of South, and it was very prosperous or whatever.
But the other one we're throwing around is the Bader-Meinhof effect, and that's like you buy a purple car, and all of a sudden you see a bunch of purple cars on the road when you've never noticed it before. You learn a new word, and you start hearing that new word everywhere, and it's a mix of actually noticing it because it's been said to you or you learned it, and confirmation bias. So those are the two things, because they kind of tie into each other, because I feel like the Mandela effect's a lot of confirmation bias.
Vicky brought up a good thing. She's going back to what I was saying about relative size of universe. She's talking about Horton Hears a Who. Dr. Seuss did a book on us being a speck of dust, and it had a whole world in the dust speck, and then
I never read Horton Hears a Who.
I know. Horton's an elephant. There's a dust speck,
there's like a creature on
and
it,
everybody
and
wants to boil the dust speck and bezelnut oil. Yeah. I'm a dork, but that's the exact thing.
The best Dr. Seuss book is all the places you'll go. Just saying.
What's the one with the Sneetches? It's the one about racism. We should send it to Trump.
Shut up about Trump.
How? You said it was relevant.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
I gotta pick my moment.
Yeah,
what it is.
You keep trying to insert it in
on
there at the
season
wrong
2.
time.
Ashton goes totally political.
Rogue. He goes rogue.
Liberal nightmare. I know. I'm sorry. I kind of don't care if I alienate.
Mina suggested I do an episode of Strictly Sickly about Trump. I was like, I think my episodes show how I feel. Don't want to alienate my listener base.
I don't think there's a Trump supporter that listens to that.
Oh, there is actually, but not a hardcore person. Anyway.
So anyway, that's the explanation of Mandela effect, is half the population remembers history slightly different.
The out there theory for that is a documentary for Nelson Mandela. I don't know yet, but probably ask Allie. She's good with that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, there is one. Morgan Freeman plays Nelson Mandela. It's
like a fiction movie, but it's based on.
It's a biopic.
Okay, but yeah, they always take a lot of leeway with those.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
I like it. It's called Mandela. But it's not about the Mandela effect.
Anyway,
the normal thought process for that would be people just remember things wrong, and it's a real common occurrence that people often have a lot of the same incorrect memories. Like Nelson Mandela died, they misremember Bernstein
Or
Bears.
what happens is someone pops up with Bernstein Bears instead of Bernstein, and you go, "Oh, me too."
Yeah,
even though it didn't before.
Yeah, and you just cool, because one of the things with memory is you're always remembering the last time you recalled that data, not the original memory.
And anyone touching anything affects everything.
Yes. So that's the logical approach to it. But what the Mandela effect itself actually says, like the paranormal explanation, is that there's these two realities that are really similar, but there's slightly different events that happen, and sometimes we either phase back and forth between the two. We shift between the two realities, or some of us have just completely flipped, and it's confusing because history isn't quite the same, and only some of us are noticing.
If you want a really interesting rabbit hole to go down, go to Reddit and go to the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit.
Oh, I've been in that rabbit hole all day.
All about people who have run into themselves or like other just weird crap. It's real out there. Some of it ends up on No Sleep. That's how I stumbled onto it, but it's creepy. Don't lie.
And part of our new podcast format is we're on Reddit now, and we are on the subreddits, and we're going to start doing like more commentary and stuff like that. But as part of this show, we're actually going to start pulling up those Reddit threads and pulling stuff from Reddit and talking and kind of reporting about those different topics as they relate to what we're talking about, and just some random stuff.
Because I've been on Reddit forever because the No Sleep page, but that's actually the first place I wrote about our ghost hunts.
Right.
Was on Reddit.
Well, I actually created our presence on Reddit just a few days ago, like in an official capacity, and I've started, like, I've always like looked at Reddit as like a third person sort of creeper, but I've never been a part of Reddit, so I've put us as a part of Reddit. And man, that's where we should have been pulling a lot of our paranormal news stories.
I kept telling you, go to Reddit, and you're like,
I wasn't familiar with it, and I asked you guys to do research and stuff like that, and you could have just been like, hey, we found this thing on Reddit, but you know, everybody just Googles the same thing. So
brings up Reddit threads if I Google it.
Screw you, Sarah. All the way to the alternate reality. You can go back to, you know, whatever's going on in negative world. Or wait, are we in negative world?
I don't know, but it's interesting because on that last podcast you did, the Not Our podcast, we were talking about that experiment they're doing where they're trying to open up the mirror universe.
And what's funny is it's coinciding with like a homegrown theory of mine with infrasound and how it affects matter and non-physical matter, possibly making the transition between worlds. And the other day, Dawn commented on it, I think, but I just posted up another peer-reviewed article. They have identified a new state of matter where, you know, you have like matter at rest, excited matter, active. They have identified a new state that is basically like excited by sound particles or whatever, but it's a new type, and it relates to that. It's kind of like all connected on this whole idea I have about all these paranormal events being bits of interdimensional sort of activity kind of leaking onto itself. Like it's like maybe the universe is becoming unstable more and more, and that's what's causing some of it.
But a lot of the stuff people talk about, the reason why they think that Earth ended in 2012 is just that they feel like things have gone drastically downhill.
Drastically
since 2012.
Not just downhill, but just like weird. Like there's more instances of the Mandela effect. We were talking about the Statue of Liberty.
Things aren't as bright for them. They don't think people are as. I mean, it goes down to just everyday interactions.
Yeah. So you were reading the thing about like emotional interactions and things like that. So things. So one person was talking about like. I think you sent it to me. This makes so much sense because things that used to make me emotional, like, don't make me emotional anymore. Like, everybody seems numb. They just don't seem like themselves. Like, she was kind of describing, like, pod people.
Yeah, the rise of chronic illness, the rise of mental health disorders, the rise of insanity in politics, the rainforest is on fire, the ice caps are melting, the world's ending. A lot of people think it's just the world actually ended. I don't know if they're just trying to speed it up for our simulation or what's their theory on why things would be bad.
You know what happened in the thing is I had to think about it.
The Mayan calendar thing.
Oh, there's that. Everybody's pointing at that. But there's an event that happened for us as well that coincides with this whole reality kind of shifted sort of thing. And that's the whole Kyle thing.
Was that really 2012?
No. That happened in 2014, okay. but it was like directly in line. Like, so this has all been kind of like a downhill shift. So in 2012, my dad died, and then I had the first paranormal experience thing in 2013, then 2014. Now that's causation. You know, I know that's causation, but I think it's really interesting how 2012 all of a sudden Oh, my dad didn't pass away in 2012. That was dumb. I totally misquoted that. 2013 is definitely when the...
Let's see, it was 20...
Something else happened in 2012, and I lost track of it.
Allie, was 2012 either the year of Caitlin getting run over by the dirt bike or Andrew's ear tumor? Or was that 2013 of the ear tumor? I can't remember.
Are you talking to somebody not in the room?
I'm talking to Allie. She's watching.
We're channeling the spirit
She's
of
on the
Allie.
freaking comments, you
Oh my
asshat.
God, technology. It's so weird. It's so awesome. But in 2014, early 2014...
Your dad died in 2014, Jesus.
No, that can't be right.
Allie with the dates.
That can't be right. Oh, Christ.
God.
I'm having problems now.
Anyway. So, but a lot of this, I think, is people are just getting older, too. Like, and the world obviously is hitting a mass, like, entropy crash. Things are deteriorating.
Oh, I keep trying to get back to the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, effing Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, so you can't go up in the torch.
Yes, you've said that.
Okay, but a lot of people think you can get... A lot of people remember going up into the torch. You haven't been able to go into the torch since the 30s because it got attacked by the Germans.
Maybe they're just remembering wrong.
In a terrorist attack, and the dude pulled up a article about it. And, no one's talking about this. No one remembers this. No one remembers that as far...
Yeah, I never heard that before.
Yeah. As far as I know, what got us into World War II was the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. And then we attacked the Japanese, which got us into World War II. And that was the only way we could get into World War II because we hadn't been attacked. But apparently, we were attacked.
But was this after or before Pearl Harbor?
I think before is what it was saying, and it's like nobody was talking about it. So anyway, it's shut down, right? And he's like, no, people remember going up into the torch, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, no, you're just remembering wrong. And the Statue of Liberty is actually on Liberty Island, not Ellis Island, but everybody remembers it being on Ellis Island. And then a bunch of pictures surfaced of people that have been on tours.
Oh, this wasn't World War II. This was July 30th, 1916, World War I.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's what's screwing me up.
The Black Tom explosion.
Okay. But I still have never heard of that before. Like, nobody's heard of that. It's not a common thing. And maybe that's just poor education. But...
Well, it's World War I. We're not taught as nearly as much about World War.
Right.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand. That's all I know about World War I.
Yeah, the royal family. Yeah.
Rasputin, the Romanovs.
Yeah, but nobody can get up there. But everybody remembers taking these tours up in there, and everybody's like, "No, you're just remembering wrong. You're remembering wrong." But a bunch of pictures surfaced of people up in the torch taking pictures from the torch. But nobody can get up in there. Like there's no way that they could get those pictures, and those surfaced on the internet. Some other weird pictures that surfaced on the internet is people on Ellis Island, and there's like a pedestal that the Statue of Liberty is supposed to be on, but in stairs that go to nothing, and then the pictures
and
all glitched out.
How do we know that's not Photoshop?
I don't know that for sure. I'm just saying this is stuff that has showed up that's fueling this debate. You know what? I don't need your crap.
Calm yourself, bro. And the other one, I always thought that Ellis Island and Liberty Island were separate. Did anyone think those were the same for reasons of not knowing? As opposed to poor education or just not knowing? Do you actually remember Liberty Island and Ellis Island being the same thing?
By memory, I don't remember all the little nuances that I've read over the past couple of days, but I remember it was this really interesting read, and you should look up stuff about the Statue of Liberty not being where it's supposed to be.
I think the Ellis Island, Liberty Island mess up is because of the quote on Liberty Island, "Bring us your huddled masses, blah, 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 blah." I think that's the reason people get it confused with Ellis Island.
Saying one more time.
So
I'm not processing
there's that
it all.
poem thing on the Statue of Liberty, "Bring us your huddled masses," or whatever, the one we need to just X out right now. But I think a lot of people associate it with Ellis Island because it's talking about immigration. They immigrated to Ellis Island, but that quote is on the Statue of Liberty.
Ellis Island is where they brought in
immigrants. Yes.
Got you. And
but I think you're
you're absolutely right. Everybody is
thinking of the quote. They're not thinking of.
They think everybody's processed where the Statue of Liberty's at. which isn't true.
It's a really little island.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
I just
I've
thought
never
of
even
that.
been to New York.
Neither,
so
never.
I want to go. I would go there. I hear it's, a dirt.
Yeah, so here sucks.
It's just the last place anybody would ever want to go. But one of the and so the thing that really spurred that is they're saying in 2012 we were like reality just kind of ended and it didn't go anywhere. There's this other cool thing that brought up that we might be at the end of history, which isn't a paranormal thing. It's a real thing that we have done everything we can possibly do as a species, and we're just going to stagnate until we die because we can't evolve anymore. We can't create any new historical moments.
I have a doctor
things
that thinks
like
our DNA is rapidly just degrading because we've just reached the end of our freaking evolutionary
our
cycle.
genome, yeah, our evolutionary cycle's ending, and our genome's just going to fail. So that's why you have such an increase in like chronic illnesses.
Another reason the birth rates
just dropped. People, things like. Of course, you also have the idiocracy theory, where just smart people don't breed, and it's just getting worse.
I was thinking
and worse.
about it the other day. All the people I know either have like less than 2 kids or no kids. Like there's only like a few people I know that have more than 2 kids that are genuinely like smart. But all the dumb people I know have a lot of babies.
See, Allie's in Camp A, where she had a ton of books on them as a kid, and she actually knows they're 2 different islands.
I said, I really just think a lot of people are confusing the quote for...
You just think people are stupid.
No, I just...
In general, that's pretty much what I heard, is you think everybody's stupid.
Well, my dad always told me
I'm not wrong.
96% of the world's population was not worth talking to.
Okay. I could get behind that. So there's the history argument where things are just going downhill because there's just nothing left to do. Like we've just reached the pinnacle and we're done.
Oh yeah, Vicky says love that movie, but it really had some truth to it. Oh yeah, that movie turned out to be creepy prophecy.
Oh my god, it scares me so much. Like I'm just waiting to live on top of trash piles. And
I was watching the intro to it the other day.
It's just.
We're waiting to have children. We just couldn't do it in this economy, and it's got like Boomhauer.
Just squirting them out like a slot machine.
I'm gonna call y'all tonight, and 3 more little babies pop up on the family tree. Like, oh god, it's so true.
It is. There's this other idea that reality isn't what we think. It's actually a simulation. Like we all basically live in a computer simulation.
I was talking to Steven about this, and his point was, does it matter?
Well, no, it doesn't matter. I'm not debating on
differently?
whether or not it does matter. We're debating on whether or not it's a thing. And the funny thing is there are a lot of credible scientists and theorists.
They can't prove it's not a simulation.
Well, they said there's a lot of evidence to support it. There's a lot of things that just kind of go wrong for no reason and go right for no reason. We don't understand how certain things, like black holes and things like that, which are just like little glitches in the matrix or holes in the matrix, and it just explains a whole lot of stuff.
I just hated those movies.
They're making a fourth one. They're making a fourth one. The Wachowski sisters.
I just hated those movies. They were so stupid.
I like it. Well, you might be living in them, so you might want to get comfortable.
It made me mad because I was just a crazy fan of an author, Christopher Pike. I mean, it's a pen name from Star Trek, but he wrote a book that was basically The Matrix like 10 years before that movie came out, and I was like, this is just rampant plagiarism. Anyway.
Yeah, but that's not even what they plagiarized. They were ripping off a bunch of animes, and they just crammed them all.
The Animatrix?
They took a bunch of different animes and they just like crammed them all together and made a live action movie.
Anyway,
could all be living in... Elon Musk thinks we are probably living in a simulation, and his solution to it is, yeah, just go with it. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, you're not going to get out. So, just do your thing or whatever.
Yeah, basically. Who cares?
But there's all these weird instances. Like the topic just kind of grabbed me. I thought it was interesting, and they brought up a lot of good points. You found the other bit that kind of related to it. While
it did not at all relate to it.
Oh,
it was just a weird.
It was just in your rabbit hole.
Was
it in your rabbit hole?
I I was watching a video on the Earth ending in 2012, and for some reason he randomly brought up this phrase, wisdom of the crowd. And it sounded like he was just popping off with this thing, but then he put it in like, capitalized everything like it was the title of something. So I went and Googled it, and it's just another interesting phenomenon we can add to the list of Bader-Meinhof Mandela effect.
Wheelhouse. It's in the wheelhouse.
Yeah,
if not. So explain, because I don't know what it is. You just told me. What is it called?
You didn't want to tell me. You didn't want me to tell you. It's wisdom of the crowd.
Okay.
So what they did is they took like a buffalo to a state fair, right? And they had everyone guess what it weighed.
They took a buffalo to the state fair.
I don't remember if it was a buffalo or not. They took a giant ass animal to the state fair, and they were playing the game, estimate how much it weighs.
Yeah, which I know a trick to winning that game.
Anyway.
Oh, I think I know this. Where you take, no matter what the guesses are, you take all of them and you average them out, and it's always going to be correct.
It's almost correct. It says that it's more correct the more people you ask. So they did it in an office, and like they had all these mathematicians present, and they had a jar of jelly beans, and they went, "How many are in it?" And some people guessed crazy shit, like half a bean or
half a billion,
20 billion, and yet still when they averaged it out, it was almost exactly on the dot how many jelly beans are in the jar.
I've won that game a lot. Like me and Mike, we went to a baseball game, and they had the thing where you have to guess how many baseballs are in there, and everybody was going up. I was like, "What did you guess? What did you guess? What did you guess?" I asked like 13 people what they guessed, and I just averaged it out real quick, and I turned that in. Got in. I was like one away.
But I've never heard of this before. This is new to me.
I didn't know. I haven't heard of it as an effect. That's just probability. That's mathematical probability. The thing is
a collective opinion of a group of individuals rather than a single expert. This process, while not new to the information age, has been published in the mainstream spotlight by social information sites. An explanation for this phenomenon is that there is an idiosyncratic noise associated with each individual judgment, and taking the average over a large number of responses will go some way towards canceling the effect of this noise. That does not make any sense to me.
What it says is all those outside guesses are going to be so far outside that when you take the average number, it kind of filters that out. Yeah. Like it doesn't throw the pendulum that far to the left or to the right of what you're looking for, because what you're actually calculating is the average guess, not the out of average guess. So you always end up with something that is dead center of every single guess. The only thing that would throw it off is if every wild guess was far off left.
Well, yeah.
But for every wild guess that you get that's far off left, you're going to get a far off right.
It does say trial by jury can be understood as at least partly relying on wisdom of the crowd. The idea that decision making would happen by a diverse group instead of a fairly homogenous political group or party. Yeah, basically.
I can't believe you hadn't heard it.
Aristotle is credited to be the first person to write about wisdom of the crowd. Interesting.
I'm going to have to look that up. I wonder how he was using it other than...
Oh, it was an ox in the 1906 country fair in Plymouth. 800 people participated in guessing the weight of a slaughtered and dressed ox. It was accurate within 1% of the weight of 1,198 pounds. Anyway, I find it interesting.
So, before we move on to like any other topics or anything just to keep it going. But do you think there's any weight to that something happened during that experiment that kind of altered the course of reality? Like, I don't necessarily think we're living in an alternate reality or anything like that. But
I just want you to, all your time you spent with me and how well you know me. How did you think I was going to answer that question?
Well, no. You believe in alternate realities, though.
Maybe.
You believe in multiple dimensions.
I think it's a possibility.
How much do you think it's a possibility?
I'm not a freaking physicist.
No. Not. That's not what I'm asking. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how probable do you think it is that there are other dimensions that we don't understand or that we can't comprehend?
Oh, like a 9.
Like a 9? Okay, that's more than a maybe. That's like almost damn certain. And the thing is
yeah, but I'm an idiot, so I'm also factoring that in.
No, you're not an idiot. You're not that far left of the scale. If we're talking about wisdom of the crowd here, you're definitely dead center at, being able to balance out your facts versus opinion. So you don't have this big collective. I have a bunch of useless data in my head. It's useless. I'm not smart, but I collect a bunch of useless data. What your ability seems to be in you taking a bunch of useful data and you save that. So when you're in some kind of conversation or debate or anything, often it appears that you don't know what's going on or what anybody's talking about. So people's thought process might lean towards you're not intelligent because you don't have the data to discuss a certain topic.
Plus, why would I want to?
Right. Because it's not useful. You don't hold on to data that's not useful to you. So what you're doing is you're maximizing your useful data.
You're going way far out of your way to not call me an idiot with whatever you're going to say next.
No, I'm trying. No, I'm trying to explain intelligence versus being dumb or being ignorant or whatever. So it depends how you're measuring intelligence. So if you're measuring intelligence by the amount of how much stuff people know, the same amount of stuff, but people aren't going to know that because you can't cover a wide range of topics. Like if we start talking about medicine, chronic illness, economic states, it's different things that are important to you or relevant to your life. You're going to have this big wealth of information that is way far beyond what anybody else can get into. Like when you're having your debates on universal health care and you're talking to Joe Schmo who's like, if I tell you universal health care is a bad idea because, everybody ends up on waiting lists and but the reasons why they're getting the bad information. You have a wealth of information about it. You're not unintelligent. You're not dumb. You have the intellectual ability. Yeah. You are specialized in your knowledge.
I'm not a bard.
Me, you are not a bard.
I'm not a bard. I'm
but
not
you
the
always
jack of
play
all
a
trades.
bard.
I like bards.
Well, I guess it is a fantasy game. So.
No shit.
Why are you being mean? It's my birthday.
Because it's your birthday.
I thought it was my
That's your
birthday.
present. Happy fucking birthday.
I'm behind on comments. Anything good?
They're discussing The Matrix still.
So we're talking about this completely different thing, and there's this conversation about The Matrix just happening on there. It's a joke. Oh my God.
Quit picking on people. Why are you being so mean? It's your birthday.
I hate you. I hate you so much right now. Dirty fish gangster. That's an inside joke. No one cares. So what did I do last night?
Okay. So usually when you sleep talk, you...
By the way, I started sleep talking in 2012. That's how this relates back.
You mumble. You mumble.
But
last night I was watching a movie, and so I'm just watching a movie, and I'm involved in this movie, and your just face appears out of nowhere, and you get about within 2 inches of my face, and you go, "Do you think I'm fucking stupid?" Just serious. Do you think I'm fucking stupid? I was like, what? No. And he said, I know you're trying to poison me. I was like, okay. I'm not trying to poison you, but okay. I kind of patted you on the head. You kind of turned over, and then you turned back over, and you went, I'm not stupid. I know you put spikes in my bed. It's like, okay, I didn't know. And then, and then you turn over and you go, dirty fish gangster. Dirty fish gangster.
I wish I had recollection of what...
And then he woke up after it, and I was like, I really got to know what dream you were having where it ended in dirty fish gangster.
I have no recollection of any
But
of
I was
this
like, tell me,
happening.
and you were like, I don't want to. You don't get to know. And then you went back to sleep. I'm like, oh, you jerk. Yeah, he was dead asleep.
There's an idea that when you're dreaming, you're actually seeing glimpses of that alternate reality.
Which would explain my space station bleak-ass dream I had.
Yeah, that could be an alternate reality where time space is completely different. Like you're looking at a different point in time. There's also a thought process behind that sleep paralysis, because when it's being observed by a third party, it's almost instantaneous.
Yeah, it looks like Steven's watched me have sleep
Yeah,
paralysis
it's
before.
a lot of. I think with you actually have like some kind of like seizure looking thing, or that lasts for a little bit.
No, that's like when I was having seizures. But no, this was like back in the day when I first started having them. He didn't notice anything.
Yeah, it was just
I was
like
just either laying there for 1 second with my eyes open or 1 second with my eyes closed.
for a lot of people that have sleep paralysis. For me, not the person having the sleep paralysis, but like say you're there and you have an episode, it's a split second for me. Like no time passes. Like I don't realize you just blinked out for a second, like so quickly that I don't even notice it. Like you're just waking up from my perspective. For you, it's this like long amount of time, and one of the ideas behind it is that it's not a medical thing, that it's actually your brain is perceiving time space differently. Like what it is your brain's going into this mode with almost like an adrenaline rush or whatever, where we've talked about that a little bit, where your senses heighten,
and time actually slows.
Time seems to slow down because time is relative to how you perceive it. And so when you go into those like fight or flight modes, time slows down so that because you're thinking fast. It's not that time slows down. It's that your brain is working super fast. Do what?
I need to step out for a minute.
Oh, okay. Well, that's going to be problematic.
Why?
Well, I mean, we're doing a thing. But
Go ahead, finish.
no, here, I'll do this. Look. So
I might throw up on you, but...
Oh my gosh, you should throw up on camera. That's a thing you should do. But, okay, while she's stepping away, basically what I'm talking about is sleep paralysis seems to last like a long time, right? And anybody that's experienced sleep paralysis will say like time slowed down, they couldn't move, there was a thing going on in the room, and then they wake up and it's only like a few seconds later, or, it's just... It's this inexplicable short amount of time, or there's these like big gaps of time that are missing, and so they think they were abducted by aliens, things like that. When you're having a fight or flight response, your amygdala changes the way your brain is perceiving the data around you. So your heart rate goes up, you get more adrenaline pumping. You can hear better, your visual acuity increases, and time seems to slow down. And what's actually happening is there's nothing happening externally. Like time doesn't slow down, but your brain is moving so much faster. It's like that Matrix effect. They're moving so fast that time seems to be moving slower. It's relative to the way you're perceiving it. And it's doing that so that you can escape or fight better, to outthink whatever the problem is. So a lot of people kind of theorize that this sleep paralysis episodes are your fight or flight responses, like triggering on super, super high levels where time just like seems to stop almost. But it causes a whole bunch of other problems. But another mode of thinking is that when your brain goes into those modes, you could actually be so heightened that you're able to perceive dimensional shifts and things like that you wouldn't normally perceive, which is a little bit out there, but not outside the realm of possibility. Because like what I was talking about earlier is that with multiple dimensions outside our own dimensions, we exist in 3 dimensions. The 1 dimension would just be like a line, 2 dimensions is a flat plane, 3 dimensions is 3-dimensional space, and we think 4 dimensions would be moving forward and backward through time, but we really have no way to comprehend, to kind of understand what a 4-dimensional space would actually be. It's something that we don't understand, and there's no way that we can fully understand it without experiencing it. And there's a movie that's really cool that kind of touches on that, and that would be Contact, where she can actually move from like one end of the universe to the other when she passes through this machine that they built. But to all the observers in 3-dimensional space, she just fell right through. It seemed like nothing had happened. But to her, who was inside this machine that created a 4-dimensional space, she went on this super weird adventure where she met an alien that looked like her dad. And it's a cool movie. It's pretty underrated, but it's a good example of we don't really understand other dimensions outside the dimension that we live in. So people think that some people theorize that people that suffer from sleep paralysis actually are more heightened to those altered states, and it's like almost the next level of evolution or mental evolution or brain activity that's, you know, like kind of a astral projection sort of thing. That would be like a fourth sort of dimension, a different state of consciousness. But I don't know, it's really hard to explain. It's just kind of like a really weird thought experiment. I really wish Sarah would come back. I'm bad at carrying on a conversation completely by myself. But I guess she's not feeling super well right this second. That happens a lot. But we hadn't been on the air for a little while because we've been doing like some like lab work, looking over a lot of our casework, things like that. That we haven't released like episodes for or whatever, because what we kind of found has led to some different modes of thinking, at least with me from a technical perspective, where I've wanted to take different looks at some different things, mainly infrasound. So we've talked about infrasound a lot in the past, where, and you guys have heard the spiel where I talk about, you know, it vibrates the fluid in your eyeball and that can cause shadows. It vibrates your eardrums even though you can't hear it, and it sets your brain on high alert. But I started kind of doing a thought experiment with it, and I was like, okay, so these are the things that it can do to you psychologically that create these sort of feelings that paranormal things are happening. But let's look at it but I wanted to like rethink it and look at it from a perspective of, let's say there's high levels of infrasound, but we're recording high levels of infrasound in almost all these places where paranormal activity is reported. And in a certain amount of our cases, we are recording possible paranormal activity from a third-party source, which would be like a camera or a recorder, things like that. Things that can't be manipulated by our own feelings and intuition and biology and mental state and things like that. So then you have to come up with alternate explanations for those, you know, and of course you have the contamination, the interference, and things like that. So, but in this thought experiment, let's say for a second that it's confirmed paranormal activity, meaning it's outside of what normal science can explain. But one thing that we can't identify is infrasound is like there 90% of the time. So if we take those two ideas and kind of go with it, we can say that yes, infrasound does cause a lot of problems with the way we perceive reality around us. And so it can make us think that there's paranormal activity there when there's not paranormal activity there. What about why is infrasound still present in confirmed paranormal activity? You know, and I use the word confirmed paranormal activity loosely because we can't confirm paranormal activity, but we're saying what if there was paranormal activity? Right, and so we get EVPs and we notice infrasound in the back. We get poltergeist activity, we notice there's infrasound in the back. We get strange pictures in video, things moving around, there's infrasound in the back. So why would infrasound still be present in almost all the instances where this paranormal activity is taking place? And I got to thinking about it, and one of the big theories I've been kicking around, because I don't really subscribe to the idea that ghosts or spirits are ghosts and spirits. Like when you see things you can't explain and paranormal things happen, I don't think it's like the human soul like wandering around, things like that. I think it's these weird instances of like recordings of like past activity or future activity or things like that. But to take it a step further, I subscribe to the idea that multiple dimensions are a thing, just like shoot, I just completely blanked out on it. The show on Netflix. I've been Stranger Things. Stranger Things. There's multiple dimensions, that kind of coexist and overlap on each other, because we understand that our universe, our positive space, is actually limited. It's not infinite like we thought, and it can touch other universes, states of reality. It can exist within other states of reality in like layers, because it's basically like a bubble. So a lot of this paranormal activity can be where these two things touch or intersect, things like that. So how does this relate back to infrasound? So think of matter in states. All matter exists in one state or another, like solid, liquid, gas, things like that. And water is a good example. So if you think of all the matter in the universe is water, like if you lived in the ocean was your universe, right? You travel through water, and that's what you're used to the world existing as, right? Well, what if the temperature drops on that? Is water gets colder and gets to a certain point, water solidifies. Hey, Sarah's back. It's fine. I'm explaining how the universe exists in different states. So let me finish that first, because I don't want to cliffhang on it. And people are like, what the theory was he talking about? Well, you remember how I was talking about, and I think I talked about it on the other podcast, which is going to come out next Monday, by the way. We're both on that, and we'll plug that in a little while. And Jared's going to be on our show too at some point. But anyway, I was explaining. So I was explaining my thought process on why I'm so focused on infrasound now, because I was talking about while we've been off the air and not doing shows and things like that, I've been looking at a lot of our evidence and our data. And I've been focusing more on infrasound. I'm doing more infrasound tests and making more infrasound things. And the reason is because, and I already explained it to them, but I got all the way through this thought process of matter exists in different states wherever you are in the universe. And it's like water. If we imagine the universe as completely being water, water has multiple states. So if you make it super cold, super frigid, you can stop the molecular movement and it becomes solid. So if you're trying to pass through ice, solid water, it's tougher. Water in its liquid state, after it's been heated to room temperature, you can move through it, but there's still friction. If you superheat it, it becomes a gas, and it becomes even easier to move through. So it's all the same chemical composition, but the matter exists in different states, and what is changing the state of that matter is heat. Well, another thing that changes the state of matter is sound. Sound affects everything just like heat does, and gravity too. It all goes hand in hand. All these things work in waves. My thought process is that if you apply regular sound to matter, it exists in a certain state. If you apply ultrasound to matter, it can exist in another state. And we've seen this. If you apply infrasound to it, it might exist in a different state. And as that state becomes more excited or less excited, it becomes less dense. And as it becomes less dense, other dimensional properties could bleed through. And
your ghosties pop up.
Yeah, and that's why in most instances of paranormal activity, you may see higher levels of infrasound present at certain frequencies, because it vibrates the state of matter a certain way.
Question. So everyone's heard the Kyle story. I walk down a path, go down a path that doesn't exist, right? We come back the next day. Instead of trees, there's an oil field. So let's say that happened.
Okay.
Let's say absolutely
so we're at Kyle.
100%.
There's high levels of infrasound when you go down there, right?
Let's say there is.
Okay.
And let's say...
And we actually know there is.
Let's say I walked through that gate and I actually saw something different. I wasn't having a seizure. I don't remember it wrong. Let's say this is a thing that happened.
You could have walked through that gate into...
Can people do that?
Yes. Why not? Okay, so let's say we're...
And how did I get back? So is there a chance you're just gonna off out in the other dimension?
Yeah,
and
you
lost?
could have disappeared for. There's people that have walked into the woods and just disappeared forever, and their body was never found. There's no proof of a murder. They got lost out there. Anything like that. People have just disappeared into nothing. Entire tribes of people. We just got done.
Oh, Daniel, look up stone tape theory. That's the one we've mentioned a couple times.
Yeah, and we've debunked it a lot, but still referenced back to it a lot as an idea, not as a scientific theory. But the Anasazi Indians, we just went and saw the
cliff dwellings,
cliff dwellings, and they completely disappeared. The Roanoke. There's like entire
Well, they think the Roanoke colony was murdered by Native Americans.
There's no evidence that there was any kind of struggle, like
except for the thing written on the trees that was, the language of a local Native American tribe.
The most common plausible theory that I've heard is that. So the thing is they actually went back and they were looking at that area at the time, and they're like, why did these people just get up and leave or whatever? And they found out that area was during that period of time was subject to a huge drought.
I know, but when we and Allie were in Virginia, I wanted to go out there so bad.
You should have. I want to go there, but they found out that area was subject to a huge drought and they needed to leave, but everything was so far away. They think what happened is that the white colonists got absorbed by the nearby tribes because they had no choice but to do that. But they never found any bodies. They never found any signs of struggle or whatever. And they thought that the Croatoa, they thought it was Croatoan Island. They thought it was a message saying they were going there, and that might have been where they had planned to go. But they went and looked on Croatoan Island, and no one was there. They never made it there. They don't know what happened, and it might have just been out of their reach. They might have got absorbed. But the thing is there's no records, and it's just nuts. But people have disappeared. But back to what you're talking about, while you were at Kyle, we know there's high levels of infrasound there, maybe certain levels of it, and we frack now. And we have more instances of this stuff happening.
The thing I looked up at Kyle was really interesting. They invented a type of fracking out there. It's actually, if you're local to the area, you know the town Rio Vista. They actually invented Rio Vista fracking out there, which they use in some places now, which is the most aggressive
and
form
that's
of
how they
fracking for its
opened up a
time.
portal to the upside down. This new fracking. Well, I mean, look at I brought up Stranger Things a minute ago. Look at how they're opening the portal in Stranger Things. Doesn't it look a lot like fracking?
Yeah.
They're like shooting a drill at the thing. It's like, and they're like, oh, we're getting oil, but then the old gods start coming through. It's a Demogorgon. No, it's an H.P. Lovecraft thing. That's exactly what it is.
It really is very H.P. Lovecraft.
I love Stranger Things, and I love that it's based on, it gets its based on, those are air quotes. I'm doing air quotes for all you audio people. It's based on actual government experiments, though. Obviously, we didn't bring things in from it. Well, that they'll tell you.
Well, and Daniel just brought up CERN, and he missed the first of our podcasts where we were talking about how the discovery of the Higgs boson, whatever particle, and the Hadron Collider in 2012 actually ended the world, and we're living in a black hole or simulated reality or purgatory or hell.
Or we collided realities, or half of our population actually got basically blinked into the alternate
Stephen
history.
Hawking wished a plague on both our houses.
Yeah, that's what started this whole debate. But back to Kyle specifically, which happened in 2014, which is direct result of the 2012 stuff happening, was we know there's high levels of infrasound out there. We know they were doing a new kind of fracking, and just to go further down the rabbit hole, there wasn't a whole lot of information on that place when we went out there. Like it was almost like it didn't exist, and so if the state of matter was changed enough that in that spot, that's where two realities actually collide, you could have walked through, and you weren't gone that long. But it seems like you were gone longer than what you were, because to us, we perceived you just going through there and walking right back. But you remember going down and doing a whole thing. Like, you have all these kind of memories about it. Time could function at a different state in these different accelerated states of matter and reality. So the thing is you could have walked through and you could have walked back before that state of matter changed. And then when we went out there again, and you have the size variations and things like that, we could have all been in that same shared space. it might not have started at that gate. Like, if you really think about it, like we always place it at that back gate.
But it really starts at the front gate.
It really starts at the front gate because we felt that the front of the place was completely different. It's that whole area. We always just place it at the back gate because that's the thing that we kind of collectively noticed is different. But we've all taken trips through that back gate knowing the layout of the front, and then the back isn't altered in any way, but it's never been altered again. So the thing is that could have been a very, very localized event, and the thing we saw in the things that have messed with us since are things that might have followed you back out from that other reality those first few nights that we were there.
That's what we saw in the woods instead of whatever it was we saw. Because the thing we saw was definitely freaking odd. I think sound affects us in odd ways because of the composition of our collective life force. And Daniel was also talking about how we're based on just electricity and sound.
So, and another thing, just to add on top of the craziness of Kyle, is years later when we went back and we started re-reviewing the evidence, that's when we started noticing the strange events where on your recorder you'll hear me answering you and you're having a conversation with me, but on my recorder
you ain't talking.
I'm not talking. You could be talking to me through a multi-dimensional state. Like, we're always there, but we're existing in two dimensions at the same time, so you're getting a feedback loop.
And
the entire
Shadow
time.
Brad.
Yeah, it's not like a something there. It's not a ghost. It's just the other reality sort of bleeding through. It's the other dimension. Mathematically, it's not like all that sounds crazy, and I don't actually think all that. I'm not.
It doesn't sound. I mean, it doesn't sound any crazier than ghosts.
Yeah, right, exactly. But mathematically, there are multiple dimensions. There are other states of being that we don't understand that have to exist. And maybe that's very what I just described. Maybe that's very comic book sci-fi. But the math adds up that there's something else.
Allie, that's what I refer to as the Shadow Brad incident.
Yeah, and it's really weird. So here's the thing. Say there is an alternate reality that has the same start point as us, like from Big Bang to history or whatever, and there's like slight differences. Butterfly effect dictates that whatever slight difference happened in...
It's just compounded.
Whatever the very first variation event was, whatever it was, it could have been FDR didn't fart at 3 o'clock, he farted at 4 o'clock.
A Man in the High Castle is the Germans won World War II. That's the favorite trope of sci-fi.
There's no way we would have got that far in history without any little deviation would cause the world to be extremely different. So the idea that we've like flipped into another reality and there's only like a few differences here and there, that I don't think is mathematically plausible. So when we're talking about these things, that's the comic book version of two realities. I don't think that, in my head, that can't exist. There's not going to be a reality where it's just slightly different, because any slight variation, even 50 years back on the timeline, is going to cause enough variation that we probably wouldn't recognize anything is being true anymore. Like, say Steve Jobs was never born. That's an entire bit, like, as much as I hate Steve Jobs and think he's not really, everything that he's hyped up to be, that's still Apple's gone because you didn't have that person innovating that. And Microsoft never would have happened without that. You would not have modern computing without Steve Jobs. Because he wasn't there to steal Bill Gates' thing and popularize and better market it, and then they couldn't riff off of each other. You would have stagnating technology, or maybe not. You would.
Maybe someone else would have cropped up, but we don't know that.
But it wouldn't be the same. It would not be the same thing. And so if you just magically popped up in that reality, like, everything would be different. Like, you would go to your computer and be like, "This isn't how the internet works," because it would all be drastically different. It would at least be named something completely different. you know?
There's a good no sleep called The Other Internet about this guy that figures out how to get into the Wi-Fi of the internet of another dimension.
Oh my God, that's like the basis of of our story is like you go to the website and you're actually, you know, reading the stories of the other dimension. I like that.
Who isn't a Stephen King fan there, Daniel?
Everyone's a Stephen King fan. Stephen King is very
Except
in vogue
the
right
one
now.
that everyone else loves. I could never get into.
The
gunslinger ones.
No, not everyone else loves
I just
those.
can never get into.
Those are really the ones only very select few can get into. Because like I like the gunslinger world.
I like the idea of it. I was saying if Rasputin didn't get as high up as he did, like with the Romanovs and all that, then Soviet Russia wouldn't have ever existed. Which, yeah, he's the whole reason for.
And we're talking about big things, but even one little variation, like you just not existing, right? That the last 30 years would be drastically different for a lot of reason. Like maybe they wouldn't notice it on the grand scale, but like if I can't think of a good example now that I'm talking about it, but I really hope everybody gets what I'm talking about. But like any kind of variation would mean we don't have vaccines. Or you know, everything has a cause and
Sabin
effect.
and Salk never met, and we never got the polio vaccine.
Yeah,
and blah 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 blah.
But you know, since we can't alter time, we can't go back in time and see what the results are. Butterfly effect is very, very much a hypothesis. It's a thought experiment, you know, but it makes a lot of sense in the timeline and how everything is cause and effect. So just popping up in any other reality, really honestly, if we popped up in any other reality, the first thing I would notice is either more pollution or less pollution. We would either have an atmosphere or not have.
We would either effed up more or less.
Right. I guess in a world where we're talking about multiple dimensions, anything's possible, any slight variations. But I don't think any other dimension would even look remotely familiar.
I don't want to go to whatever dimension that thing that Kyle crawled out of.
Right.
That's a dimension I would like to freaking
You know what dimension that's from?
avoid.
That's the dimension where we had nuclear fallout and things were mutated. Yeah.
Another interesting, like, I don't know if there's a name for this, is the groupthink thing, where people have some sort of unified consciousness. Because they have those experiments they do where they, like, cut up all the earthworms and they feed them to other earthworms, and then the earthworms can do stuff. Like, they teach these earthworms to run a maze. And then they cut them up and feed them to other earthworms, and those earthworms can run a maze.
And then they absorb the data.
Or they do it like a genetic memory. They'll breed mice who have learned how to run this maze, and their children will learn faster how to run the maze. So what
memories are passed down through your DNA to a certain degree. It's like, how do birds know to migrate? Like even if they don't have a parent bird to teach them, birds know to migrate. And one of the ideas is that it has a lot to do with like that herd mentality. Like you always follow the things around you, but they've seen that behavior in individuals, like with the earthworm. That individual earthworm knows how to do a thing, or the individual mouse knows how to run a maze without any sort of assistant. It's a really interesting thing, and they think that a lot of that memory comes down genetically. Like we have a lot of throwback memories that we say are like evolutionary memory. Like a lot of your fight or flight responses are based on like Neolithic era sort of responses, like seeing that's what matrixing is, or pareidolia. It's our brain is designed to pick out dangerous shapes in the darkness because we don't see very well in the dark.
The question then becomes, so let's say there's a mass shooting and you've had a bad feeling all day. Is this the groupthink thing happening? Is this the collective consciousness, or is this more examples of confirmation bias?
Well, the funny thing is you can only observe those feelings after the event as reflection. And, you know, it's a very true statement that hindsight is 20/20. Sort of thing. Things are clear after it. Like when you, and also our memory is shitty. We stated this at the beginning of the series. So you have to question yourself: did you really feel that way in the moment, or do you or after you've gotten all the information, are you remembering those feelings slightly different, as stronger maybe?
I've gotten to where even though I don't believe in that sort of stuff, I'll actually go up to multiple people and say, man, I got a bad feeling today.
Well, and that's one of the things we had to change about our investigations.
And then generally nothing happens, so I'm not psychic.
Yeah, if you're being so, we try to leave the psychic stuff out of our studies or whatever. But
occasionally something happens.
But we have to touch on it. Well, I had dreams about Yoakum before I went to Yoakum or whatever. And in turn, I had seen videos. Kristen had not seen videos, and she swears she saw that exact same hallway. But that could be reflecting back on it after she saw it, and it's altered her memory of what the dream. And dreams are a little fuzzy anyway, right? But that's why we documented it beforehand. Like, okay, what do you remember about this thing?
We went to great extents to separately document it and record it and blah blah blah.
Yeah, and so I think on a long enough timeline and on a big enough study, if you put 10 psychics in a room, people that are generally, let's say they're like right 80% of the time, like throw a crazy number out there, they're pretty damn accurate, right? I think even in cases where people are highly accurate, if you document every feeling and thing that they throw out there for what it is, and you go along with it, and then said event happens, and then you go back and you compare it like a 1-for-1, I bet it's only an average of like 50% accuracy among the group or the individual. But we tend to only remember the things that are positive or negative.
The things that impact.
Yeah. So you either remember when you completely whiffed, or you remember when you hit a home run. But you very, very, very rarely remember all the, I hit it, out to left or whatever.
But for it to be accurate, you have to be able to repeat it consistently, and that's something that people can't do.
Never happens. And I get ripped on all the time about that. Well, so-and-so is accurate about 80% of the time, and it's not an exact science. Then it's
not science.
Then it's, and then it's also not mystical, because okay. Say you have visions of things. Okay. And you're right 50% of the time. It's 50% of the
guessing.
time. Well, it's just guessing, but you're having visions of it, and you're right. Okay, it's not an exact science. Maybe time changes. Maybe you observing it makes it happen differently. You're really psychic. You're really seeing. Let's say you're really psychic. You're right 50% of the time, right? Yeah. I'm not psychic at all. I'm still right 50% of the time. So at the end of the day, what does it matter? And that's kind of where I'm at on it, is unless you're right 100% of the time, or I'll even be generous with it 80% of the time, and nobody is right 80% of the time. Even people that are like super intuitive, blah, 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 blah. Unless you're just giving them a whole lot about a bunch of crap that doesn't matter, there's nobody that's clairvoyant that is 80% right. And if there is, I want to see the numbers, and I want to see where that's coming from. Because I can do the same thing just through logic and be right about 60-70% of the time. Somewhere between 50 and 70.
Vicky says, this is just one of the things that has happened. I said we are going to be in a bad car accident after leaving the airport, and we were. But that asked me how I knew that. I saw it while still on the plane. It happens all the time. Problem is, I can't make it not happen. So the question is, how many times have you gotten that feeling and nothing happened, and you're not remembering that because it didn't make an impact?
Yeah. When it doesn't come to fruition, you don't remember it. You don't think about it.
How many times so I remember all the times I've gotten a bad feeling and something god awful has happened, but I don't remember the thousands of days I've just been depressed and nothing has happened.
There's a lot of truth to this. So a lot of people, like life coaches or whatever you want to call them, they'll say, look, if you think negatively, negative things are going to happen to you. If you think positively, positive things will happen to you. And it turns out
You just perceive those things differently.
right. So they did a study on that. They got a bunch of people that, you know, but psychologists said that this person thinks negatively, or however that. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not gonna.
I'm your standard pessimist. The shrink has told me that if I continued being pessimistic, that negative things would happen to me.
Okay. So they lumped these people in the two groups, and then they watched how their life played out. Right. Negative people, negative things happen. Positive people, positive things happen.
The positive people were editing out the negative things.
Right. Negative things happen to the positive people all the time.
And positive things
but they
happen
were
to
just
negative
they were just ignoring them. Positive things happen to the negative people, but they were just ignoring them. And a lot of them still were in the same life situations or whatever that they were in from the very beginning. None of them had spiraled up or spiraled down. It was basically a static group. But they had perceived themselves as like, oh, my life's going down the toilet, and the other group perceived themselves like, yeah, I'm doing better than I was 6 months ago.
So a realist looking at that sees that everything's just the same. The positive person thinks things have gotten so much better. The negative person thinks things have gone to shit.
So like if we apply that to what we're talking about, like, oh, things have really gone downhill since 2012.
Or maybe we all just turned into pessimists.
Maybe, or if we take an objective look about it, has it really all gone downhill? Because a lot of good and a lot of bad's happened.
Well, Allie just made a comment, and I do know this about Allie. She's always been an extremely positive person. In fact, she used to get on to me about how negative I was. And she's turned pretty, I wouldn't say pessimistic lately, just less optimistic.
And this isn't a call out, and I would much rather Allie be here in person to, like, you know, weigh in on it. But I also want to say what has happened in Allie's life in the past couple of years that might affect that.
Yeah.
She's had some pretty bad chronic health issues in the past couple of years. It's pretty hard to stay positive when that happens. Like, she's physically in pain. Like, and I'm not saying bad on her for being in a bad mood. I'm saying there's a lot of that's out of her control. Where, like what positive thinking is gonna fix
nothing.
What's going on with her, and
it just changes how you cope.
Yeah, and I think she's extremely positive considering the shit hand she's dealt.
Yeah,
but yes, she is thinking more negative lately with our political situation. Things
well,
like
and that's
that.
the question. So, are things actually going bad with the world at large, or are we? Is it more news? Is it more visibility? Is it more confirmation bias? Is it more education?
From my perspective and my thinking, there's a twofold problem. Okay, so one, if you have any kind of common sense, you know the environment is rapidly declining. Like the ecologically, the world is currently on a downhill slope and it's ending. That's pretty bleak. It's hard to be positive about. People are trying. You know, like a lot of people.
Meanwhile, I feel like I've got to go home and explain to my kids why they can't breed.
Yeah, like
y'all aren't allowed to have kids now.
Like other than Americans, you know, everybody wants to fix the the ecosystem. There are some things that are outside of human control, or individual control.
We'd have to all change really rapidly.
Yeah, like right now, like hey, turn off the internet, stop using fucking electricity, pull your head out of your ass. Yeah, or no more fossil fuels, things like that. There's a lot, and we can't just go back.
We're not going to do that.
That's not going to happen. I mean, the real solution is you find like alternative thing, you know, to replace those. Anyway, so but there's things where we can't just like fix it. So you do have this like big existential crisis going on. The other thing is media. And this is why Trump is in office, because he's right about a couple of things. He's using that information inappropriately.
He's gaslighting and being manipulative.
Yeah. The whole fake news, fake media thing, he's not wrong.
No.
Does the media paint him in a bad light unfairly sometimes? Yes.
Oh, the news is crazy biased.
But the thing there is a bunch of fake news and there's a bunch of biased news because we went to these like news outlets. You have far left CNN, you have far right Fox, and there's no in between. There is no in between. I don't care who says they're in between and unbiased. There's not a thing. Where Trump uses that to his advantage. He says that's fake news, but it's only the stuff that paints him in a bad light. Mm-hmm. There's also fake news about him, obviously, that paints him in a good light.
Julie says it depends on who you ask. I know people who think things are going great right now.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about with my friend Scott earlier today, because we were talking about the economy, and we were talking about because it's affecting our company a lot is trade deals and tariffs and stuff like that, right, with China, and I agree with raised tariffs for import goods. Like, I don't like outsourcing all our jobs, but I do believe that trade is very, very vital to you're ignorant if you think we don't need trade. Like, oh, we'll just produce everything here. You're stupid if you think that. But it's not okay to lay off your entire labor force here because it's cheaper to make stuff in China or Mexico or whatever, right? So anyway, we were talking about that, and I said, no, we do need a change with the way our tariffs work. I think Trump's going about it the wrong way, and it's causing more problems than solutions right now. But the simple question I pose is, and he leans more towards the Republican side. I obviously am very towards the left side. You know, like, I'm not a full-on raging liberal.
Say you're more moderate than you are, but
I'm more liberal than I am. I mean, if
you're
I'm being
Canadian
honest,
moderate.
Yeah, I am very much more liberal than I am moderate. But I am definitely like in the more moderate category. I'm not just like, hey, full-on socialism. You know, I believe in balance. But and he leans more to the right, more to the conservative side.
He's very authoritarian, yes.
But he's not like crazy, right? But I asked him, I was like, no, he's
okay, Scott, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
no,
Scott,
he's
got some slightly different ideas about
like
how to handle the gun control.
Skew slightly right.
Yeah. Anyway, so I asked him, I was like, what do you think the state of our economy? And he's like, well, you know, the last thing I watched, we're good. Things are up. Mm-hmm. But if you watch a lot of the news outlets that I watch, the economy's tanking.
Yeah.
And depending on what you're looking at, how it's going, one side is saying, no, the economy's better than it's ever been in the past, blah, blah, blah. And we're on this big rise from the biggest economic crash since the Great Depression or whatever that millennials have lived through. And then you look at the other side and it's like, no, it's still on a decline. The ups that are coming up are just these spikes, and it's a much different look at it. And neither one is actually right. It's like
somewhere in the middle.
It depends on what size scale you want to look at. And so if you look at a lot of the right side news, they're looking at these smaller scales. And if you're looking at the left side, they're looking at these bigger scales so that they can show the decline. But it's all bias.
The question I have for our viewers is, so talking about the media changing your mind on things. So let's say you have kids and you're living in the 70s versus you have kids and you're living right now. Or think of a kid you love. Everyone knows a kid. Would you be more willing to let your kid play outside alone in the 70s, let's say the kid's 8 or 9 or 10, or would you be more likely to let them play outside alone in 2019?
In the trend, okay, so are we answering this? Are we going to wait a second?
I mean, just straight off the gate, not...
Well, I mean, I know the reality and the statistics.
You know where I'm going with this, but knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, most people won't. So most people don't let their kids play outside by themselves and walk around the neighborhood on their own anymore because of pedophiles and kidnappings and things like that. Here's the thing: if you look at the actual statistics, and this, I think this is where you're going with it. If you look at the statistics, that's not happening.
It's actually the crime rate is much lower for especially children.
Yeah,
than it.
Kids don't get kidnapped by strangers. They get kidnapped by
people they know.
People they know, family members. They don't get molested by strangers. They get molested by people they know.
And but people think, people seem to think that back in the day everything was actually better. But the fact is now media only reports negative things. Well, the crime rate in the 70s for kids was insane because people weren't paying the same attention to it. People got away with it a lot more. But towards the later 90s, people started figuring out all these signs and symptoms of when your kid's getting
so
picked
it's
on.
more preventable.
Yeah, it's more preventable, but it also has made this bias.
Seems like everything's more preventable except mass shootings.
Yeah, where people are just actually afraid to let their kids go outside now, but that actually doesn't affect the helicopter parenting. Hasn't actually lowered the amount. It's awareness.
That goes back to that confirmation bias thing because everybody thinks that the era they grew up in was like the golden era.
So much better.
So boomer, everybody that's like in power right now, basically your boomer generation is like, oh, the late 60s, 70s, early 80s,
Because
that's the thing.
Everyone
that's
in my family gets, because I let my kids go outside by themselves because we live in a nice neighborhood, and you know what? They are perfectly capable of taking care of themselves, but people freak out.
Yeah, and we're subject to the same thing. We think the 90s, we think the 90s is the golden era. It's like, oh man, we were just getting the internet. It was a bright hope. We were learning all these new things. Technology was just hitting. Clothing was different. Music.
Everybody romanticizes the past.
Was different, right? And so now this next generation, they're going. I don't know how they're going to do it, but somehow they're going to romanticize this. They're gonna be like, oh, the Trump era was it's like, are you kidding me? But I know how they're gonna do it. It's technology.
Things were a roller coaster. Everything was interesting.
Technology was peak. I didn't have to go outside. Like, I had a tablet and I had a phone and I had all these things, because the next bit of technology is gonna be like so advanced that they're not gonna understand and be like, oh, all I have to do is think. Okay, so your kids are growing up in an era where you can walk into a room and say, hey, Google, turn the lights on, and the lights just come on. What was it you were saying the other day? Caitlin's grown up in a world where she never had to deal with something. What were we talking? She's lived in a world.
I don't remember.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
No.
We were talking about it the other day. She's grown up in a world where she's never had to deal with a certain aspect of reality. Like, she's never known a world without the internet.
Yeah,
she's never known a world that just like certain things like that.
It's like she's never lived in a world where, so she makes this wild statement where you have to have a phone at her school or you get bullied. Doesn't matter how poor you are. She's never lived in a world where literally everyone, including homeless people, didn't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
And it's weird because back in the day, that was something that was so rare.
She's never lived in a world where people had a phone that was attached to a wall and you couldn't, and
a corded phone to freak her out.
Yeah, and it's certain things like that. And the next generation's going to have the same thing. Her kids are never going to live in a world where everybody's got like a cell phone. Everybody's just like the chip planted in their head.
Well, it's like, what song were you listening to the other day? The Postman song, Bring Me a Letter or whatever. And I was thinking, man,
who sends letters?
I used to say,
anymore?
who is living in a world where people are still sending freaking letters to each other, unless it's something super formal. But anyway, the fact is that you do romanticize the past, and the crime rate is lower than it's ever been.
And Vicky says the internet killed the kids being kids, and that's a common thing. But
I don't think it's true.
But the deal is the internet's done a lot of good things too, but it depends on your perception of it. It's more that.
See, I perceive the internet as a good thing.
Overall, it's a good thing. So cell phones, and being connected all the time, what that has caused us to do is shift from being individual people to a more hive-minded thing. So there's this thing where, yeah, everybody's an idiot, and you want to call so-and-so an idiot, but collectively as a species, we're technically smarter because information is instantly at your fingertips. Caitlin's never lived in a world where she couldn't Google. That's what we were talking about.
She's never lived in a world where she had to catalog information in her own brain.
Yeah, where she had to go find an answer for something and outside of just the internet. Yeah, where she had to go like find out. That's what we were talking about. She's never lived in a world that didn't have Google. So like, if you're talking about a subject that you're not versed in or whatever, and you want to fact check it or whatever, it's all at your fingertips. Like anything you could want to know, any experience that anybody else is having on the planet, you have access to that experience and that collective knowledge. So technically, we could be the smartest species, like in the history of our species. We could be at the peak, but we're seeing this weird effect where now that you have every fact at your fingertips, just with the click of a button, we've got to the point where we're ignoring facts now because we can't trust all those facts.
And it's weird. I was thinking about the last time I was having dinner with my grandma, and she asked me a question. I went to Google it, and she said, no, answer not using Google. And I was like, I could answer it not using Google, but why wouldn't I want to get my facts straight before I answer
because then you could be giving wrong information. That's the problem. And you would rather get wrong information from somebody than get the correct reality.
Yeah.
Like none of that makes any sense. And we've got to a point where fact and opinion is a blurred line and people don't understand the difference. And that's what's making paranormal investigation even harder
Yeah.
than it was back in the freaking Victorian era, because like it's come back full circle.
Oh yeah, Julie says, what about the difference between fact and opinion? And people seem to have that so skewed. They seem to think that what they have faith in is fact. So if they're, let's say they're right-wing, die hard, everything on Fox News is literally fact. And if you show them a video, like an uncut video, that's a lie, and that's your opinion. But theirs is fact. It's this term alternative fact we've come up with, which isn't a thing. It doesn't exist. Facts are facts and opinions are opinions. But it's this whole group of people have decided that that's not a thing anymore.
Oh, and that's 100%. And like, I know we kind of went off on this tangent, and that's what I want the show to do now, is where we can have these like conversations. But and I'm not trying to ram politics down. It's an example of, you know, fact and opinion and confirmation bias and things like that. Not everything is what it is at face value, and that is a huge problem,
especially with the internet.
With the internet, with these paranormal debates, like, and that's why we get railed so much, because we're going in and we're trying to sort fact from opinion. We're not trying to say your house is haunted or not haunted or anything like that. We're trying to separate out what did happen from what you think might have happened.
Well, and the other thing people do
and when we're having like a debate on, are we in multiple realities or whatever, we're trying to say, we could be. But what is the evidence? What are the facts to support that? There's very little facts. There's a lot of opinions, and there's a lot of theories and hypotheses. Say what you're going to say.
So you posted a video about some dude's house being haunted, and the other thing we have to do is if anyone else gets the information, if anyone else records it, if anyone else documents it, we can't believe it.
No, because there's too much room for error.
And people expect you to go on face value.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people miss about a lot of our statements is, you know, we put what we find out there, and they think we're saying so and so is wrong and we're right.
They think we're implicitly right.
When I put out a video, and I'm just saying this flat out, you 100% can't trust us either. Well, I mean, we're doing an even study.
X-Files with it. Trust no one.
Well, I mean, we're doing an even and we're doing a fair study. But if you're just a person that watches us on the internet, and that's your only interaction with our data, you just watch the video we put out there, you cannot trust that. You can't just look at that and say, oh, I like them. I mean, you may like us as investigators and you may like what we have to say, but can you prove I didn't fake it? No, you can't. Can you prove I didn't fake it? To a certain extent, you can.
Myself?
Yeah. You can watch what I'm doing with editing.
I can do a witness statement, but no.
You can do that, but you can't prove I'm not faking it when you're not in the room or doing some kind of setup or anything like that. And okay, so what's the fix to that problem? Is we have to go in and do certain controls, and we have to do group studies, and we have to find repeatable data. So our data is more reliable, but at the end of the day, you cannot base your opinion on our study with just the videos that we put out and some of the information that we put out. You have to take a look at all our collected data. And the thing we do different than other groups is we're putting our raw data out there. You can download all of our videos completely 100% uncut. You can download all of our audio, all of that completely uncut. You can make an appointment with me, come to the house, and come watch, and get your hands on the original files. You can't do that with Ghost Adventures. You can't do that with a lot of these groups. They'll be like, oh, no, that's too much of a hassle, blah, 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 blah. But we're trying to present an even study. We're also taking certain things out of the study, and that's the reason for that, is we're taking the emotional side out of the study. We're not talking to a psychic. I don't care how you felt about a situation, other than I just want you to document your feeling. But that's not the evidence part of it. It's an aside, because it could be
affect how you're perceiving things.
Yeah. It could become pertinent to the psychological state. It could be pertinent to how you perceive things, but there's nothing in there that's provable, or we haven't got to a point where we can prove it yet. Not with current technology, not with current tools, not with current video, not with the way we currently have our experiment set up. We have not plugged all the holes where it is fact, where it's past hypothesis and then to theory and things like that. There are things that are fact, but that stuff still gets skewed as an opinion. But that causes a lot of problems with paranormal investigation because, okay, just as much as we go through a lot of trouble with how we're doing things, from the way we started to where we're at now, there is a lot of expense, labor, everything goes into that, to the fact that we really don't even put out videos anymore because we're so much going over everything with a fine-tooth comb that we don't really have time to be entertaining anymore because we've gotten so much into this. And yet these other groups are just putting out stuff and people are like, oh yeah, it's we just proved scientifically that we got this EVP and it's a ghost talking to us, and because we found it with this ghost detector. Mm-hmm. Okay, anything that's labeled as a ghost detector, first off, we don't know what ghosts are, so how can you make something that detects ghosts? You can say you're detecting EMF, but you can't say you're detecting ghosts. Yeah. You can be like, there's an EMF fluctuation here, but you can't say it was a ghost. We can say we're detecting infrasound, but I can't say it was a ghost.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that, so you have to be factual about, these are the things I'm measuring and these are the things I'm recording. Could this be caused by paranormal events? Mm-hmm. Yes or no? And then at the end of the day, it's always just a huge question mark. And so that's why we're more reliable and you can trust us, because we're not claiming it's paranormal.
We're just showing the evidence.
Yeah, I don't think we have a single video where we said it's paranormal. We may say like we saw a thing or we experienced a thing, but we've never said that we definitely recorded paranormal activity or this place is definitely haunted or anything like that.
Not even Kyle.
Yeah, I'm very, very, or I try, and I may say something like kind of tongue in cheek, but it's as far as statements go, I never state that, this is a factual thing.
Yeah.
There's no way I can say that with a straight face and be honest. Because I don't know those things. We haven't proven any of those things, not even to ourselves. And that's why you can trust our videos, because we are presenting our videos as opinion based on evidence that we've gathered.
Yeah, never fact.
But we're not taking it to that next step where we're saying ghosts and paranormal activity are a fact.
We don't have the ability to take it to that next step.
Other groups do. They say it's a spirit, or they say...
they don't have the ability either. They just do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, they take that next step, and they're making this jump in conclusion. But people see, okay, they have evidence to back that up, so that must be a fact. That's not true. A body of evidence does not necessarily make proof. It does not necessarily make a fact.
Now look at a crime case.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's a lot of evidence that put away tons of killers or whatever, and then they were completely exonerated 20 years later when DNA...
Yeah, because evidence can be super shady. Hello?
What?
Oh, you just kind of...
No, I was reading a comment. You were saying something, but no, that's the thing is, so the next step in evidence came out. There came out new tests and new standards that had to be met to prove somebody guilty, and we went back and we looked at some of these older cases where, yeah, there was a body of evidence that convicted somebody of a rape or a murder or a kidnapping or something like that, and then the DNA evidence comes out, and it turns out, yeah, there was all this evidence, like so-and-so saw somebody, and they found this shoe here, and this blood splatter thing here said this, and there's no way anybody else could possibly be guilty, and then they get the DNA evidence. Turns out, no, it was Barney, not Fred.
I think a lot of people on a jury, much like watching a ghost hunting, forget the phrase beyond the shadow of a doubt. It needs to be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt. If anyone can doubt it for any reason, you can't put someone in jail.
And see, the way our justice system works is through wisdom of the crowd. They're taking the law of averages, because what they're doing is they're pandering to so first off, the way we select our juries is pretty effed up, because you've got your two lawyers. They're in a room, and you got like basically
You basically have to pick the most ignorant of what happened.
Yeah, you're basically sitting there trying to interview one by one to figure out, okay, well, this guy doesn't like black people. This guy doesn't like Chinese people. This guy thinks that aliens abducted him.
This guy saw this on the news and already picked out who did it.
Yeah. And so you're like, no, I want to weed them out. But you're also looking for people that already have confirmation bias into the case that you're trying to make.
Like they talk about the Casey Anthony case. They had to go like way across the state to find a jury because it had been so widely televised. Everyone had already decided she did it. She totally did it, but they couldn't pick the jury like that.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the cases where the media is causing all this confirmation bias, and the media has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more polarized. All the politics aside, it's 100% the media's fault that we're so polarized as people in this country right now, worldwide too. It's actually twofold. It's the media became these singular outlets that were pandering to the two extreme sides and pushing people apart, and then it was also what's the name of the company? Analytica.
Oh yeah, watch that documentary.
Yeah, just mining everybody's data.
What is it called?
The Great Hack.
Yeah, something like that.
Or the Hack.
It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's Concord Analytica, I think is the name of the... No. It's Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah, Cambridge.
Cambridge Analytica, and they went in and they basically took everybody's data, which legally, by the way, everybody's like, oh, they illegally took it. No. They didn't do anything illegal at all, because we were... that was my opinion about it. We were putting our information
Breach
on
your
there.
user agreement.
Yeah, it was stupid. We want to be mad that they took our data and did stuff with it, but we handed it over to them. But what they did with it was pretty fucking heinous. And they took all that and then manipulated us into these different camps.
You remember, what was it, the 4-season House of Cards where they were doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Where they're using social media to...
Yeah, I know that's based on books or whatever, but that's a dark reflection of what was really you at the time.
Yeah, it's based on Parliament in England. But, it was...
when were those written? Because what Cambridge Analytica fixed the Brexit thing to happen first. Well, was it written way before?
House of Cards came out on TV like 10 years ago.
When did Brexit happen?
Like 2 years ago?
I think it was longer than that. I think more time has passed than you remember.
Brexit was right about when Trump was running, so...
Well, he's been in office about 4 years, and I think...
3 years. Came in 2016, 17, 19.
And hopefully we'll get him out in 2020.
No, that won't happen.
I know, I don't think it will either, but...
They pulled a page out of the O.J. Simpson playbook on the Anthony case. Yeah.
Yeah, straight out of there. Dude, there's a guy at work that thinks O.J. Simpson was innocent.
I was so little when that happened. I
remember it.
I was very little.
I watch the made-for-TV movie. That's where I get all my information. About everything is the made-for-TV movies.
Anyway, I think people forget with the ghost hunting videos, like they do with any crime, is you have to actually prove it. Well, like 99% of the time.
I don't know, but back to like what originally... I like the new format, by the way. The going down the rabbit hole. We like our tangents.
If you don't,
yeah,
watch anyway.
Yeah, I like it to be like kind of consistent, and it kind of comes back, and it's. Could we be in some kind of alternate clashing reality, things like that? I don't necessarily think so, and I don't necessarily think it's related to CERN, but I do.
It's possible.
I do see all these like kind of weird things that 2012 just does seem to be kind of like a turning point.
Well, and I think me and Daniel have talked about it just like aside from this, and he had mentioned the CERN project and how things had kind of degraded since then. I'm not sure if he ever mentioned the alternate reality, like I don't remember exactly word for word, but he was just talking about how things have kind of trended downhill.
It may just be that was the pinnacle of our scientific discovery. I mean, that's the smallest particle discovered at this point, and what that is teaching us about in the world of physics is things that we had already kind of understood. Like we were already getting, like it taught us some new things, but we were already kind of at the pinnacle of theoretical physics and things like that. but not a whole lot life changing. Like when we were in the space race and we were figuring out how to go to the moon. A lot of technological advances. We got microwaves.
Yeah,
we
how
got
much
Pop
stuff
Tarts.
came
We
from that?
got Tang. We got Velcro.
Is Tang really an advance?
Yes, as 100%.
It's gross.
It's amazing. I love Tang. I love Tang.
You do.
But there were things that the general public could see, you know, and with these big like technical. Okay, so what has the general public got out of the Higgs boson Higgs?
It just feels like we're getting more of the same, more advanced of the same thing. Better phones, better internet, but nothing new.
Well, nothing technologically has changed. There's no like product that
We haven't made any like crazy medical advances.
I tell you what it did is it took the intellectually elite and boosted them higher, making more of a separation from us. So if you already knew things about physics and stuff like that, like on a level past, like I'm pretty versed in a lot of physics stuff, but you know, I'm a casual person.
Yeah. But if that's like your area of expertise.
But if that's your area of expertise, all of a sudden it's boosted you to this level where you're in a new class and you're like, oh, I knew this and I understand how this does it. But it doesn't affect the general populace. And so all it's doing is it's placing a wedge between science and everyday people where we see them as more snotty now. And it used to be in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, science and general public was going hand in hand. As science advanced, people advanced, and we liked it because technology got better and we were advancing and we liked it.
And now it's split.
Now all of a sudden it's science is past the point of helping humanity,
and people have started to think it's bad.
So they've gone more towards mysticism, religion, and paranormal.
I think a big reason for that is because the internet allowed just enough information to enact the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you've seen that graph, if you've learned just enough that you think you know everything, and as you learn more, you realize you know nothing. So it gave enough people enough information to think they know everything.
Yeah, everybody's. I mean, I am subject to the Dunning-Kruger, and I was looking at the graph, you know, where you first learn something, and you're like, yeah, and then as you learn more of it, you're slowly going down, and then as you become an expert in it, you think you know nothing because you know what you don't know, and then you go back up, but you never get as high.
That's the imposter effect, where you feel like you don't belong and you're stupid.
Well, because you're aware what you don't know, and then you kind of go back up where you realize, well, it's okay because nobody else knows anything either, and you get kind of back up there, but you never get to that initial point. So we got like about 5 minutes to wrap up. So final thoughts?
Just a lot of phenomenons. Dunning-Kruger, Bader-Meinhof, wisdom of the crowd.
I think we're just back to observing facts. So I think there's a lot to be said.
Literally anything could be possible.
I don't think literally anything could be possible.
Like,
it's not
in different amounts. Some things are 0.05% possible. Some things are 99% possible. We can't prove anything.
I think if you're being truly objective,
thanks for watching, Vicky.
About the different things, is that if you're being truly objective about it, a lot of the stuff with this particular theory, this particular discussion about alternate realities could exist, alternate states of dimension could exist, but not in these ways. There's nothing that we could have done to really cause matter decay where we wouldn't have just like immediately noticed it or like exploded the world sort of thing. I mean, our studies in the dark matter, like we're really far into it, and we still have not isolated dark matter. We're having to do some like really weird things, but mostly just be objective. I also want to talk about we were on a podcast. Was that last week or was it the week before? I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and it's not a live podcast. This one's recorded, and I think it's going to come out now. I think it's going to hit iTunes next Monday, but it's called "Someone You Should Know" with Jared Herzog, and it's a really good podcast. We listened to one episode on the way there. I listened to the one about CBD oil.
Yeah, go back and listen because this first person's a flat earther, and he said it was a really interesting show.
Yeah, and we did the longest podcast with him to record so far, and we're the only ones to finish
And
his
what's
beer.
interesting is he played us for the flat earther.
Yeah,
He played our clips for the flat
yeah.
earther.
Apparently, we've showed up in some of his other.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's his first episode, so I'm kind of happy to be in there.
We should really listen to that.
Yeah, this is the guy that was doing a documentary about ghost hunters, and he came with us. And
I look it up on Facebook. That's where I found it. The Someone You Should Know is Jared Herzog.
Yeah.
Spelled like it sounds, Herzog.
Herzog. Yeah. I don't know. He really so he talked to a whole bunch of ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, and he always ended up coming back to us.
I think we gave him good sound bites.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, but we were on that show that's supposed to hit next Monday, and he's a huge paranormal. Like I said, he was doing that. He was doing a documentary with a bunch of ghost hunters, and was always coming back to us. So he's been on a bunch of like ghost hunts.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested to get him on this show to talk to him as a third party. Is not somebody who's like an investigator, like somebody that thinks they're knowledgeable about it, but who's been observing a bunch of different groups that are knowledgeable about it. And I really like that he was open to the idea that I brought up that, hey, that documentary that you haven't finished yet, what you should do is you should talk to us again now, because it's like almost like 2 years, year later, 2 years later.
See if anything's changed.
Yeah, and like we'll be at the beginning and show how we changed at the end. But I really like him. He's a damn good filmmaker, and I'm really surprised at how good his podcast is. And so I'm happy to. And I think we're going to do some more stuff with him on other topics, not paranormal related, later. But I want y'all to check that out. We're almost done with the Yoakum investigation video. I just about have that wrapped up, and that's going to be on Amazon.
I'm going to try and get Strictly Sickly set up for the second week in September.
Okay.
That's my goal. Second week in September.
I think we're going to move that to more like a monthly schedule, since you guys have such a hard time with like health and all that. And we might actually, I was thinking maybe try to do that kind of like a hybrid between pre-recorded and live, and maybe bring in like some, like do a pre-recorded podcast, but have like a bunch of little mini live discussions where you bring that stuff into the main podcast, or just to try something different.
Whatever. I was just saying we're going to aim for an episode on the second week of September, and we'll discuss some new stuff.
So one of the things we're going to do going forward is we're going to have a bigger presence on Reddit, because that is I should have listened to you from the beginning, is a good place to.
It's a hell of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, to mine topics. So we're going to start bringing some more of those, debating a lot of those topics.
Remember, check out the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit.
Yeah. So basically the one we've been talking about today is the Glitch in the Matrix one, which is pretty spot on,
it's
interesting.
Trippy.
And I'm not sure what next week's topic's going to be, but so we're going to go back to doing these weekly on Fridays.
Oh, Julie says happy birthday.
Oh, God. Thank you. So we're going to go back to doing these Fridays. This is season 2, and
we have seasons now.
Yeah, we actually have a whole first season. And I'm going to go back and re-edit those into 30-minute episodes, and those are going to be available on Amazon as well. What else do we got? Oh, October 11th, we're going to be in Farmers Branch. We have an event on our page. We are doing a open to the public live ghost hunt demonstration in Farmers Branch, and this is run by Victoria, who
the A.W. Perry.
Yeah, who used to run the A.W.
She runs
Perry.
a good show.
Yeah, she's good.
Besides that, we don't really have any ghost hunts because it's really damn hot, and none of the places we go have AC. But we're trying to get the gel in Cleburne for winter.
Oh yeah, we discovered we'll just do a quick mention on that. But we discovered a new ghost walk. If you're in Texas and you're in the kind of like DFW sort of North Texas area, Cleburne has a really cool ghost walk.
It's not expensive, but it is like a 2-mile walk.
Yeah, it's what was it, $5 or $10?
I don't remember.
It was dirt cheap, but worth every penny.
It was really interesting. The girl that does it's really nice, and there's a really cool jail on this ghost walk that might be open to ghost hunts. And I've lived in Cleburne since I was 9, and I had no clue it existed.
But we got the inside track to do that, so we're trying to be the group that goes in there and does that. Okay, guys, so thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.